April 2024, it fired 180 ballistic missiles at Israel in one salvo. Now, the Iranian regime is firing 1 or 2 missiles at a time. If the Iranian regime accepts a diplomatic solution in which it dismantles its ballistic missiles, dismantles its nuclear program, dismantles its support for proxy armies, Israel will embrace that. Israel will be skeptical of Pakistan's involvement. This is a country with a history of being very hostile towards Israel, not even recognizing Israel as a country. Before the October 7th massacre, the world was talking about building a trade corridor that would go from India through the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and connect it to Europe. And the Iranian regime is trying to frustrate that trade corridor.
President Donald Trump has claimed the war is won while also pushing diplomacy. How aligned are Israel and the US on strategy right now? And given Iran has denied any talks, is diplomacy realistic?
It's clear that the Iranian regime has lost the war. It lost its entire leadership in the first few seconds of the war. And since then, Israel and the United States have been systematically destroying the Iranian regime's ability to continue threatening its neighbors. We've seen how Iran has been firing missiles and drones into civilian areas, into airports, into energy infrastructure, and Israel and the US are systematically destroying that ability. But the Iranians are laughing in the face of the United States. They're rejecting negotiations. They think they are in a place to insist on demands. And so it's clear that this is not over, because the Iranian regime is not interested in stopping to be a threat to its neighbors. It's not interested in stopping its nuclear program, its ballistic missiles, its support for proxy armies that have caused violence and terrorism across the region. And so I think as the Iranian regime continues to reject America's offers of diplomacy, we're going to see Israel and the United States doubling down on what they're already doing, which is protecting the whole region and the whole world from the threat of Iranian aggression.
Eylon, they reported US 15-point proposal. It asked Iran to curb its nuclear and missile programs and cut ties with proxies. Would Israel consider this sufficient for long-term security? And if a deal is reached that falls short of dismantling Iran's full capabilities, would Israel accept it or act independently?
Israel acted together with the United States to eliminate an existential threat of a nuclear-armed Iran with thousands of ballistic missiles supporting proxy armies throughout the region. So if there is a diplomatic agreement in which the Iranian regime that is sworn to death to America, death to Israel, agrees to stop being a threat and to be a peaceful actor, Israel will, of course, welcome that. But the Iranian regime is rejecting that. It's rejecting it because it is an ideological, fanatical, apocalyptic regime that is sworn to the destruction of Israel and violent attacks against its neighbors and the United States. So unfortunately, I don't see any prospect for the Iranian regime accepting America's demands. Israel wants to create the conditions in which the Iranian people who have tried to throw off this horrible regime before will be able to rise up and claim their freedom. And we're already seeing Iranians on the ground giving tip-offs to Israeli intelligence to target the instruments of regime oppression because they want to build a free Iran. And ultimately, the only way there will be peace in West Asia is if the amazing civilization of Iran is no longer governed by a fundamentalist, religious, apocalyptic regime that is sworn to violence across the region, and the Iranian people are free to build a free and democratic Iran.
Eylon, how would you also describe Israel's current military objectives in Iran and Lebanon? Are we looking at deterrence, degradation, or regime-level change? And Israeli leadership has said that we are not done yet. What does endgame look like from Israel's perspective?
Israel is not trying to deter threats. It is trying to remove them. Israel wants this war to end with the destruction of the Iranian regime's ability to threaten its neighbors. Not only to fire ballistic missiles into the middle of Tel Aviv, they're firing at people's houses, but its ability to fire at Kuwait Airport, Dubai Airport, its ability to threaten its neighbors around the region. Israel knows that if this war ends with the Iranian regime still in possession of thousands of ballistic missiles, nurturing fantasies of revenge, it's going to be only a few months until the whole of West Asia finds itself in another war with the Iranian regime again. This has been going on for nearly 3 years, since October 7th, when Israel was invaded by one of Iran's proxy armies from Gaza. And Israel wants to end this for good. It wants to end it so West Asia can move forward to peace, and not the Iranian regime trying to rebuild its war machine that we've seen it using so recklessly and indiscriminately in the last few weeks to attack every country around it.
Eylon, Iran also continues to launch missile and drone attacks on Israel and US bases. Since you also mentioned about the other countries as well, has Israel underestimated Iran's ability to sustain retaliation?
You mentioned that the Iranian regime is firing at Israeli bases. I want to clarify, the Iranian regime is firing at Israeli residential neighborhoods. It's firing ballistic missiles into people's houses. Yesterday, we had a direct missile strike on Tel Aviv. Over the weekend, on the cities of Dimona and Arad. That did not hit military targets. It hit streets where ordinary people live. The Iranian regime is deliberately firing ballistic missiles with warheads of up to 500 kilograms, sometimes ballistic missiles with cluster munitions that explode in the sky and scatter over a 10-mile radius in order to hit civilian targets. But the Iranian regime's ability to retaliate is severely degraded from what it expected at the beginning of the war. Iran expected that it could fire hundreds of ballistic missiles in one go. Like in April 2024, it fired 180 ballistic missiles at Israel in one salvo. Now, the Iranian regime is firing 1 or 2 missiles at a time because Israel and the United States are destroying its launchers. And more importantly, Israel has destroyed Iran's ballistic missile industry so they can no longer build more ballistic missiles. The threat from the Iranian regime is already much less than it was just 3 weeks ago because of how effectively the US-Israeli coalition has demolished the Iranian war machine. It is very stress-inducing for Israelis to run to shelter. We've had about 130 missile sirens in Tel Aviv, but the Iranian regime has not been able to cause nearly the damage it was expecting because of how successful the joint US-Israeli air campaign has been.
Eylon, there are also countries like Pakistan who are positioning themselves as a mediator between US and Israel wars against Iran. How does Israel view this development? Would Israel be open to mediation involving countries that have historically had complex ties with it? Would Israel accept mediation that includes countries not formally recognizing it? And also, in case the negotiations succeed, will Israel halt its campaign immediately or continue until its objectives are met?
Obviously, if the Iranian regime accepts a diplomatic solution in which it dismantles its ballistic missiles, dismantles its nuclear program, dismantles its support for proxy armies, Israel will embrace that. We would much rather the Iranian regime stop itself from being a threat than Israel have to do it by force. But that is not what is happening now. The Iranian regime is upping its demands because it's trying to use the Strait of Hormuz in order to blackmail the entire world and threaten global consumers in order to protect its war machine and its ability to keep striking at civilian targets throughout the Middle East. So Israel will be skeptical of Pakistan's involvement. This is a country with a history of being very hostile towards Israel, not even recognizing Israel as a country. Israel does not see Pakistan as a good faith actor. It looks with concern at Pakistan's growing ties with Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, and other Sunni radical actors in the region. But if anyone is able to pull a magic solution out of their sleeve and get the Iranians to agree to do something they're rejecting, that would, of course, be welcome. It's also not very likely.
Talking about India now, Prime Minister Modi yesterday had a conversation with the US President Donald Trump. They both talk about the West Asia region. India urged stability in the Strait of Hormuz. How does Israel see maritime security as a shared priority with New Delhi?
For Israel, it is absolutely critical to ensure maritime and regional security so we can develop that trade corridor we've been trying to build for the last few years. Remember, before the October 7th massacre, the world was talking about building a trade corridor that would go from India through the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and connect it to Europe. And the Iranian regime is trying to frustrate that trade corridor. It's trying to stop that energy corridor. It is trying to sow chaos and violence in the region so that the pro-stability actors in the region cannot grow and cannot prosper. So ending the Iranian regime's ability to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, to bomb Dubai airport, to bomb civilian and energy targets in the region is absolutely critical in order to build that shared prosperity and economic infrastructure with our friends in the region, most importantly with the great people of India.